I was literally shocked when I experienced my very first British summer. Back in the United States, I was used to heat waves. If you are from Texas, Florida, or even Chicago, you know what it is like when the summer sun turns the outside world into a literal oven. But in America, we have a secret weapon that we take completely for granted, and that is central air conditioning. The moment the temperature outside climbs past 80 degrees Fahrenheit, we simply click a button on our thermostat, hear that beautiful hum of the compressor, and turn our entire living space into a glorious 72-degree refrigerator. We do not even think about it. It is practically a constitutional right. So when I packed my bags and moved to the United Kingdom, I saw the weather forecast for my first British heatwave and genuinely laughed. The news was warning everyone about a sweltering 32 degrees Celsius, which is only about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I remember thinking, oh please, 90 degrees is just a pleasant spring afternoon where I am from. I am American. I can handle this in my sleep. But oh my goodness, I have never been more wrong in my entire life. Within 24 hours of that heat wave hitting London, I was suffocating. I felt like I was trapped inside a brick pizza oven. The air was thick, heavy, and completely still. I looked around my flat, desperately searching for a thermostat, only to realize there was absolutely nothing. No vents in the ceiling, no condenser units outside, just massive heavy radiators attached to the walls that were completely cold, because obviously the heating was turned off. My immediate American instinct kicked in. I ran around my flat, opened up every single window as wide as they could possibly go, and sat directly in front of them, waiting for a refreshing breeze to save me. I thought, surely, letting the outside air circulate is the only way to cool this place down. I was sitting there sweating through my t-shirt when my elderly British neighbour, Margaret, spotted me from her garden. She looked up at my wide-open windows, sighed, and walked over with a look of polite concern on her face. She looked at me and said, "Dear, what on earth are you doing? Shut those windows immediately and pull those heavy drapes closed." I looked at her like she had lost her mind. I was literally thinking, shut the windows? In this suffocating heat? Is this some kind of British hazing ritual? But she was completely serious. She explained that by keeping my windows wide open during the hottest part of the day, I was actually inviting the blistering hot outdoor air inside, which was then warming up the solid brick walls of my flat. She told me that British homes are built to be thermal sponges. Once that heat gets inside, the house will trap it, hold on to it, and radiate it back at you all night long. I was skeptical, but I was also desperate. So I did what she said. I shut the windows, drew the thick, dark curtains, and sat in the shadows. And within an hour, the temperature inside my flat actually started to drop. It was like magic. That was the exact moment I realized that America has completely forgotten how to keep homes cool without relying on massive energy-sucking cooling machines. Brits have an entire highly scientific system of passive cooling that is built directly into their architecture and their daily habits. But as an expat, learning these unwritten rules was a massive learning curve. Also, this is exactly the kind of thing I go much deeper on with the people who support this channel directly. So if you are sitting there thinking, okay, I need the fuller version of this expat survival story, join the membership below. That is where I share the deeper thoughts, the more personal side of all of this, and the extra bits about navigating British life that I cannot always fit into the main videos. To really understand why British homes behave the way they do in the summer, we have to look at how they are built compared to American homes. In the United States, especially in newer suburban developments, houses are often built using timber frames and drywall. They are essentially giant, hollow wooden boxes with lots of insulation. Because of this lightweight construction, American homes have very low thermal mass. This means they heat up incredibly fast under the direct sun, but they also cool down incredibly fast the moment you turn on the air conditioner. The entire system is designed around active temperature control. We build lightweight boxes, and then we use massive amounts of electricity to pump cold air into them constantly. But in the United Kingdom, things are completely different. The vast majority of housing stock here is old. We are talking Victorian terraces, Edwardian semi-detached homes, and even older stone cottages. These buildings were constructed using solid brick, block, and massive sandstone or granite. They do not have hollow wood walls or modern drywall cavities. They are solid, heavy, and incredibly dense. This type of construction has massive thermal mass. Think of thermal mass like a giant thermal battery. In the winter, which is what these homes were primarily built for, that battery is your best friend. When you turn on your radiators, the thick brick walls slowly absorb that heat. Even after you turn the heating off, those bricks continue to slowly radiate warmth back into the rooms for hours, keeping you cozy and saving on energy bills. But in the summer, that thermal battery can turn into your worst enemy if you do not know how to manage it. If you let the hot sun beat down on those brick walls, and if you open your windows to let the hot daytime air inside, those bricks will absorb all of that heat energy. By the time evening comes and the outside air finally cools down, your bedroom walls will literally be radiating 85-degree heat directly onto your bed like a brick oven. This brings us to the 5 biggest cooling mistakes that Americans, and honestly many modern renovators, make when trying to survive a British summer. The first massive mistake is what I call the daytime breeze trap. This is exactly what I did on my first day. When we are hot, our human instinct is to seek moving air, so we open the windows to catch a breeze. But here is the scientific reality of a heat wave. If the temperature outside is warmer than the temperature inside, opening your windows is literally just importing heat. You are taking 30-degree air from the street and dumping it into your 22-degree living room. Unless there is a strong chilly wind, all you are doing is accelerating the heating of your indoor thermal battery. The golden rule in the UK is to keep the house completely sealed during the peak hours of the sun, usually from 11 in the morning until 6 in the evening. You have to treat your home like a thermos flask. If you put cold soup in a thermos and leave the lid on, it stays cold. If you take the lid off on a hot day, the soup warms up. It is as simple as that. The second mistake is failing to understand the power of solar heat gain, which is especially problematic in modern British renovations. Anyone who has watched British home improvement shows like Grand Designs knows that the country is absolutely obsessed with letting in natural light. Because the UK is famously overcast and gloomy for a large portion of the year, architects love to design massive rear extensions with giant glass bifold doors, huge roof lanterns, and wall-to-wall glazing. They want to flood the rooms with light. But during a summer heatwave, those gorgeous glass extensions turn into literal greenhouses. Sunlight passes through the glass, hits your furniture and your solid floors, and converts into infrared heat. Because modern British homes are also highly insulated to meet strict energy efficiency standards, that heat has absolutely nowhere to go. It gets trapped inside, causing the room to overheat rapidly. To combat this, you have to initiate what my friends here call the shadow protocol. You must block the sunlight before it even has a chance to heat up the room. This means closing your curtains, dropping your blinds, and in extreme cases, using the ultimate slightly chaotic British heatwave hack, putting aluminum foil on the inside of your windows. It looks incredibly ghetto fabulous from the street, like you are running some kind of secret operation in your living room, but the physics are undeniable. The foil reflects the solar radiation back out through the glass before it can ever convert into heat inside your home. The third mistake is using fans completely incorrectly. Most people think that fans cool down rooms, but they do not. Fans only cool down people by accelerating the evaporation of sweat from your skin. If you leave a fan running in an empty, closed-up room, all you are doing is using electricity to spin a motor, which actually adds a tiny amount of heat to the space. But Brits have developed some incredibly creative hacks to turn standard, cheap plastic fans into makeshift air conditioning units. One of the most popular tricks, which is widely discussed on British weather forums every single summer, is the frozen saltwater bottle hack. You take 2 large plastic bottles, fill them with water, and add 3 teaspoons of salt to each one before throwing them in the freezer. The reason you add salt is because salt lowers the freezing point of water, meaning the ice gets much colder and takes significantly longer to melt, often lasting up to 6 or 7 hours. Once they are frozen solid, you secure them to the back of an oscillating tower fan. As the fan draws air in from the back, it passes over the super chilled frozen bottles, creating a genuinely cold breeze instead of just blowing warm, stagnant air around your face. You just have to make sure to put a towel underneath to catch all the condensation, so you do not ruin your carpets. Quick thing before we get to the worst 2 mistakes on this list of cooling disasters. The data on this channel shows that over 80% of you watching right now are not subscribed. That means you are showing up for the content, which is amazing, but the algorithm has absolutely no reason to show you the next video. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Now, let us talk about the 4th mistake, which is a massive one for anyone living in a multi-story house, the loft hatch lockdown. We all know from basic physics that hot air rises. In a typical British terraced house, which often has 2 or 3 floors, All the heat generated by cooking, electrical appliances, and human bodies naturally migrates upward throughout the day. By the time you go to bed, the ground floor might feel relatively comfortable, but the top floor bedrooms will feel like a sauna because all that hot air is trapped right under the roof. To solve this, Brits utilize what is known as the chimney effect. If you have a loft or an attic space, you should open up your loft hatch during a hot evening. By opening that hatch, you create an escape route for the hot air to rise up into the uninsulated roof space and vent out through the eaves. To make this even more effective, you open a window on the ground floor and a window at the very top of the house. This creates a natural thermal siphon. The cool evening air is drawn in through the bottom of the house, while the hot, stagnant air is pushed out through the top, completely flushing the heat out of your brick thermal battery in a matter of hours. This process of nocturnal ventilation is the absolute key to surviving without AC. You keep everything sealed during the day, and then the moment the outside temperature drops below the indoor temperature in the evening, you open every single door and window to let the cold night air cool down those heavy brick walls for the next day. This brings us to the number one biggest mistake, and the ultimate cultural realization for any American living in the UK, believing the myth that retrofitting air conditioning is the easy, obvious solution. When Americans come over here and experience a heat wave, our immediate reaction is always, why do they not just install AC? It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Surely it's not that hard. But the physical, legal, and economic realities of retrofitting central air conditioning into the British housing stock are absolute nightmares. First of all, central AC requires ductwork. You need large, hollow spaces behind your walls and ceilings to run the massive ducts that carry cold air. But as we established, British homes are made of solid brick and plaster. There are no hollow wall cavities. To install ductwork, you would have to completely gut your historic home, destroy beautiful 100-year-old plaster cornices, and sacrifice valuable ceiling height in rooms that are already much smaller and cozier than American spaces. This means the only real option is a ductless mini-split system, where you mount a plastic evaporator unit on the wall of each room and connect them to a condenser outside. But even this is incredibly difficult and expensive. Because the walls are made of solid brick, installers have to use heavy-duty core drills to make holes through 18 inches of masonry just to run the refrigerant lines. The installation costs are astronomical. In the US, adding AC might be a standard home upgrade, but in the UK, retrofitting a multi-room split system can easily cost £5,000 to £10,000, which is a massive financial barrier for the average homeowner. And then there is the legal red tape. The UK takes architectural heritage incredibly seriously. Millions of homes are located in designated conservation areas, or they are listed buildings, meaning they are historically protected by law. In these areas, you cannot just screw an ugly, noisy metal compressor unit onto the front of your Victorian brick facade. You have to apply for planning permission from the local council, which can take months and is frequently rejected if the unit is deemed to ruin the historic character of the street. Even if you get permission, the electrical grids in many older British neighbourhoods were not designed to handle the massive electrical load of entire streets running high-voltage compressors all summer long. But beyond the physics and the law, there is a fascinating psychological element to this. The British relationship with heat is incredibly complex. For 9 or 10 months of the year, the great British public is subjected to grey skies, drizzle, and biting cold winds. Brits absolutely crave the sun. The moment the temperature hits 20 degrees Celsius, which is only 68 degrees Fahrenheit, you will see people wearing shorts, flocking to public parks, and packing out pub gardens. Heat is viewed as a rare, highly celebrated, temporary guest. Because of this, there is a deep-seated cultural resistance to spending thousands of pounds on an air conditioning system that you might only actually need for 7 to 10 days out of the entire year. The prevailing British attitude is simply, put a jumper on in the winter and just complain about it for a week in the summer. It is a shared national experience. Sitting in a scorching pub garden, drinking a warm pint of cider and complaining about how abnormally hot it is practically a British national sport. If you installed AC and sat in a perfectly chilled living room, you would be completely cut off from that beautiful collective suffering. If you guys are loving this perspective and want to show some love, hype up this video by leaving a comment below with your wildest heatwave survival tip. Whether you are an American who cannot live without 90-degree cooling, or a Brit who swears by the foil on the window method, let us get the discussion going and show some support for this community. Surviving in the UK without air conditioning really forced me to change how I think about energy, architecture, and comfort. In America, we have become so accustomed to active, high energy solutions for every single minor discomfort. We do not adapt our behavior to our environment, we just force our environment to adapt to us using massive amounts of power. But learning the British way of passive cooling, understanding the thermal mass of my building, managing solar gain, and utilizing nocturnal ventilation has been an eye-opening lesson in sustainable living. It turns out those old brick houses actually do know exactly what they are doing. You just have to learn how to speak their language. Until next time, keep your curtains closed, get those saltwater bottles in the freezer, and I will see you in the next video.